Tilting the blade is a brand new ball game, but in a great way. Everything that we've learned so far still applies, but we have a lot more options. We're going to use the same setup that we did before, but we're going to tilt the blade about 20 degrees plus or minus. I'm not really concerned about the exact degree, but I do want to be able to come back to the same spot every time later if I happen to want to add some segments or something like that. So I'll put the handle in the same spot every time. I'm going to take an entirely different approach. You remember the ABC blocks we played with as a kid? Well, these are ABC blocks too. I took the same setup that we used previously to do these, and I cut all of these with the blade tilted. Now, if you recall, we had complementary segments, we had standard segments, slanted segments, we had all kinds, and they all fit together just like ABC blocks. So I got the idea, why not cut a bunch of blocks and start putting them together to see what kind of configurations we can come up with. Now, is that a cool idea or what? We're going to start out with the complementary segments. If you recall, I had skewed the fences over quite a bit, so there would be a big difference between the complementary segment and the primary segment. But with these, what I wanted to do is have them as close to the same as possible. So I made it symmetrical, but we're going to still use the primary and complementary concept because we want to zero out any errors that might exist. So even though they look the same, they're actually not. But when you put them together, they do what they're supposed to do. Well, you've probably noticed that I have small segments and I also have a bunch of big ones. I thought it would be fun to do both. And all of these are cut with the same setup. The basic complementary segment ring is very simple. You just alternate the primary and complementary segments, and even though the blade is tilted, they go together perfectly without a problem. The interesting thing about this is I can take out a big one and stick it in this little one over here, and it fits. Now this kind of demonstrates the interchangeability of the segments, and you may say, well, why would I ever want to do something like this? And you never know. Now we've added the simple straight segment, and this was cut from the P fence, the primary fence, so you can make it match the segment exactly. It works pretty good. And I did the same thing with the small one. We have another configuration using the complementary segments, and that is turning them all flat like this, but we still alternate primary, complementary, primary, complementary. And this leaves it open for a triangle, and we make the triangle as a complementary pair. Making triangle segments is easy. All you have to do is set the fence to 90 degrees, flip the strip, and cut away. But nothing is ever 90 degrees, is it? Our goal is absolute accuracy, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut them as a complementary pair. Before, when we cut a complementary pair, we deliberately set the fence off kilter a little bit. We could see the difference in the segments. We were trying to accomplish something else. In this case, we're going to set it as close to 90 degrees as we can and flip the strip just like we did before. But the problem is we cannot see the wide and the narrow of the segment. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a mark before we cut each one so we know which end is which. We can stick these in here and alternate the line in and out, and it will make a perfect addition without adding angularly to the ring. And you can see it makes a quite attractive ring. It's simple, but it's nice. And using the smaller segments, I made this and went ahead and glued it up. but it turned out pretty good. Sometimes I like to take a couple of triangles and glue them together, and when I do, I line up the mark on the same side like so, and you have to take quite a bit of care in getting it lined up really well. And the reason for doing that is instead of putting a single in here, you can put one in here like that and all the way around, and that gives you the opportunity to make a double-decker ring all at one time. Okay, with this you simply add the additional primary and complementary blocks, and that looks pretty good, don't you think? Here is a one of the others glued up and everything, and it turned out pretty good. I did the same thing with this one, but I turned it a little bit to give it a little bit of interest. And of course, at any time, if you want to, you can go ahead and add straight segments in there to make it more interesting. You can see that's what I did with this ring. Now here we have a straight segment that is cut fairly fat and put on each side of the triangle segment. And of course it adds nothing angularly to the ring, so you can intersperse them just as you will, and you can make as thin as you want. A segment cut with the wedgie sled with the blade vertical looks like this, like an ordinary segment, and is totally accurate. But when you tilt the blade, the segment that comes off of one fence is leaning one way, and the segment coming off of the other fence leans the other way, which gives us some very interesting options in putting rings together. As you can see, I've cut 32 segments and put all of the right ones over here and all of the left ones over here. You can put the segments into groups like left leaning or right leaning and have a nice ring with the segments leaning one way or the other. You can also mix it up a little bit and add a few triangles, which are non-angle triangles. So it looks like you have a zigzag pattern. And you can make the next layer go the opposite way, just like so. And it looks pretty good. Now what is really interesting is you can combine the complementary segments with any of the others into interesting configurations or patterns and do all kinds of things. As you can see, you can do quite a bit with this method, and it's just like ABC blocks. You just get an idea and start putting blocks together and see what you come up with. It's pretty cool. Well, you can probably tell I had a good time showing you how to do this. You can do it yourself at home without buying a thing. If you've got a 30-60 triangle like this, you can make a 12-segment ring and make all of these different kinds of segments that will go together just like this. Most of the segment configurations you cannot get a triangle for, so SegEasy's making these in 9 different sets, and you can get them from them. But like I say, give it a try. Prove to yourself that you can make great segments every time. How about that?